designer, curator, and founder of branding studio In-House, which also is a typeface foundry. His work is driven by a desire to connect people and build a better, beautiful world, no matter the media or resources. You know, there's lots of other things as well, but I'll let him kind of take it away from here. After the talk, we'll jump right into Flex Studio, hearing from the MFA grads, the grads this year, just completing their thesis. And so we'll do our best to kind of like keep on time. It's a packed schedule.
All right. I need to do one thing real quick. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay. All right. Should I do this? Yeah. All right. I'm terrified of public speaking, so bear with me. All right. So, like Josh said, that's my name. That's how you spell it. Lope Gutierrez-Ruiz. I'm an artist, designer, and curator. And like all of you that are here, like I wear many hats. These are some of the roles of the jobs that I have had through my career as a creator. But it all sort of started when I studied social sciences, sociology, which fundamentally shaped the way in which I lead my creative practice, my work. Sort of channeled my curiosity for the human condition into what eventually became an interest in aesthetics. But it also landed me my very first gigs doing anything creative that were as a writer. In the back are some of the magazines and publications that I either edited or published in South America or here in the US. I'm originally, the way that I describe it is that I'm from the place where South America and the Caribbean meet, so nothing works. It's called Venezuela. And the fact that I was a journalist and that I spent many years writing content, shooting content, editing content, like over a decade before I started designing content, I think that also brings a different perspective on how I approach creative work. It had an influence of the main project that I'm going to talk about here, which is this exhibition that is right now at UT Austin. My sort of path towards where I am right now was completely reversed at most folks that I know from my previous life as a journalist. I was a journalist, I became an editor, I became a publisher, I became a curator, and there I had like a midlife crisis, and I became an art director and a designer and at a studio. About 14 years ago, I co-founded a studio that is called In-House International. Our website is weareinhouse.com, and since the beginning, we were a completely remote studio, which translated or which grew into this specific interest in having all of our staff immersed in different visual cultures and being members of different subcultures. So when we meet, everybody's bringing something different. As you can see, our work can be described as colorful, typography-driven, but our goal has always been to be work that challenges the familiar. We're remaining experimental, we're being open to using new technologies, etc. Some of the clients that we have had for the years include Meta, Spotify, the United Nations, BBC, NPR, MFA, Stanford, you name it. And we are a design studio. We are also a typeface foundry. We specialize in display. Thank you so much. We specialize in display typefaces and particularly in variable typography. We design and code variable typography. And this slide is not up to date because after releasing Sample, then we released Locha, which is one of our newest ones. Locha is the lowest denomination coin in the country I'm from. It basically means worthless. Is more samples of that font, that typeface, more samples, and some ligatures and glyphs that I particularly like. And after that, we released this one. It's called Favora, and here's an interesting bit about the studio. That is that basically our practice is divided into two arms. One arm of the studio works with corporations, startups, companies, basically everything that is a for-profit. And the other arm of the studio that I lead works with non-profits, arts, and education. And last year, for the first time, we are doing an effort between the two arms of the studio to consciously reach out to a specific sector, which is non-profits and for-profits are working on what we call climate technology, which is basically addressing the effects of climate change. So when we released this typeface for the first time, we created a campaign that sort of like, aim to address that audience that are our interest and through the entire marketing campaign of it. And I'm particularly proud of this couple, Burning Fossils. It's like breathing ghost. I kind of like that one. One of the things that is important also about the studio that I mentioned before is that these are the three partners. In the middle is the director of the studio, which also happens to be my wife. And we have very, very different backgrounds. We have completely different lives before we met each other, different passions. Like I said, I'm a journalist. And these are like the three things that we do with, like when we're not designers. And this, together with our staff that is spread all over the world, means that we bring a mix of global references and different approaches to solving problems when we work with our clients. But also, we have really different ways of thinking, and I think that translates into the approach that we have to many of our projects. An example is this thing that we did for MIT. They asked us to make a poster. It should be like a fairly simple project, right? This is the Cas9 protein sequence, which is used for genetic research. And they told us, we want to make a poster with this. And we sat down with them, and we asked them the kind of questions that you get from like a fucking DJ, and a philosopher, and a journalist. And we realized that, am I speaking too fast? I feel like I'm going super fast. Yes. All right, and we realized that what was important was not the legibility of each individual character, but what was rather to convey a sense of awe at the beauty of what we can do with science, at the magnitude of the achievements that we can do with science. So we looked at this, we realized it's only 20 letters repeated, so we built a font that took additional information about the characteristics of each one of these letters, number of times they're repeated, etc., and then we just typeset this typeface, and it looks like this, which is, for me, a very different way of looking at typesetting. This is a straight up just like typesetting, and a very different way of trying to approach this goal of conveying a sense of magnitude, a scale of beauty, science. Another project that we did recently that I think is like, it doesn't look like other stuff in its neighborhood, is a publishing house in Argentina called Goma, G-O-M-A. Loma, they were adamant that they wanted to be a brand that is mascot-based. So we took the 4 letters of Loma. They're going to come up in a second, and we created this number of these characters, just by adding eyes to those shapes, and it became very simple to create permutations of the characters. You will see in a bit like a cupcake on the right there. And it has been like super successful. It has won like this really like important place among independent publishers in Argentina. And then we don't really have many clients in Austin, I will say this, because our studio is based in Austin and in Barcelona. Most of our clients are not really associated to any specific geographies. So, but this project we're really happy and proud of with Fusebox, a performing arts festival. I hope some of you have heard about it. It has been around for about 20 years. And they're always championing daring work, experimental work. 2 years ago, they invited me to expand our collaboration beyond doing design work, and we did our first project at the Contemporary in downtown Austin on Congress Avenue. And basically, they were celebrating 20 years as an organization. They didn't have, as a performing arts festival, they didn't have much in the way of what to show in a museum. So we sat down and we looked at the idea of the historical records that they have, like meetings, notes, etc. And we decided to make a completely fake record shop in which we took the most important events, performances, concerts, Zoom calls, etc. And we made completely fake vinyl records because the store was called Fusebox Records, which is obviously a play on words. These are some of the favorite ones that I designed. And the thing is, I designed about 100 vinyl covers in the span of 1 month, which is an insane and delirious thing. The most difficult part was designing the ugly ones, I would say. So after the success of this collaboration, Fusebox reached out again, and they said, let's go deeper, rather than just commissioning you as an artist to do some work. Let's have you curate something, which brings us to the project that I'm here to talk about. It's called 100 Points, and it's a massive contemporary graphic design exhibition with about 4 cities that do not have more different visual cultures between them. They are Austin, I did a different poster for each of them, Sao Paulo, Cairo, and Helsinki. Like I said, the show is view at the Visual Arts Center right away. It closes on January 1st, but actually the final day to go see it beyond a private tour is on December 20th. So I invite you all to go, but the thing is that the show is massive. It's 16, it's 4 studios per city, so that adds up to 16 studios, and there's a total of 46 projects, and the footprint of this thing is almost 4,000 square feet. It includes a book room that had this open curatorial process where I invited all of the studios that if they wanted to submit anything, like they were open to do it. And nowadays it has about like 70 volumes and different print materials. It also has a projection room, which I'm going to talk about more about later. Right? So it opened in late September, runs until January. The opening night, several of you were there, and it was a massive success. It was the biggest opening night in the history of the VAC, which is amazing. And an important thing that I want you to take from that is not that it was successful, but that it's a proof that there is an interest in graphic design in our city to do so. I hope that this entices you to make your own graphic design exhibitions, events, etc. And after the opening came what I could only define as an endless stream of events, conferences, tours, and giving tours all the time, giving lectures like this all the time. And one of the things that I'm extremely proud of that we were able to do through a combination of grants, private funding, asking favors to Jimmy, to Carol, was that in last month we were able to bring people from all of the cities that were featuring in the exhibition, and we did this conference, and we did a series of workshops, critiques, and they had the opportunity to meet designers in Austin. They did studio visits, and after they gave this conference, we basically spent 2 days partying together, community building. And the thing about the show is that it's a group show, right? It's 16 studios, 3 projects per studio, 46 projects, and it does a deep dive into some of what in my humble opinion, some of the most exciting work that is being done, most cutting edge that is being done by studios in these design capitals from around the world. They kind of folks are pushing the boundaries of what design, branding, type of design can be, packaging, but also invites people to reflect about the effects of geography and community in your work. Cairo could not be more different from Sao Paulo. Helsinki is smaller than Austin. Sao Paulo is the biggest city in the world outside of Asia, etc., etc. But if we go back to the beginning of the project, and I was talking with Joshua yesterday, and we were talking about, the day before, about the motivations behind doing, why the hell did you do this? And I think I had to go back to my notes to put together this, and basically there were 3 reasons of why I decided, it's not like I'm not incredibly busy at my studio with my clients and releasing typography, etc., but why did I decide to do this crazy project? And, the 3 reasons, I'll just go for it. The first one is that historically my studio has done a lot of work for technology companies in Silicon Valley, and we have been hearing about artificial intelligence, AI, for a decade, and we have already seen the effects in those early adopting sort of enterprises. So in response to the changing perception of the value of graphic design or the status of graphic design, I decided that what I wanted to do was to create an exhibition that brought back the idea that design is human and is made by humans. And the way that I did this is by making basically every project be 3-dimensional, to emphasize the human, the crafted origin behind graphic design, because as this idea of artificial intelligence is rapidly altering the perception that we have of what design is, and people are mistakenly thinking that digital tools are going to replace humans rather than augment them, I think that it's important to ask ourselves, how can we reintroduce the concept of design as human in our work as academics, practitioners, designers, etc. And for me, in the context of the exhibition, was about breaking away from the screens, breaking away from cell phones, from iPads, from all of that, and as much as possible, and create a show where people could interact with things and could actually touch and manipulate the objects, to reintroduce the idea that everything designed by someone, right? A lot of the things were somebody's dream that they were able to manifest into a reality, collaborating with a designer. So, and particularly that the aspects that make a design project, whatever it is, successful, that are, common practices like research, sketching, prototyping, but also craft. And craft is going to be the big debate in the next decade, in my humble opinion, as artificial intelligence becomes more prominent. The relationship with manufacturers, all of these are ideas that, in my humble opinion again, make it possible for an audience to understand that design can be irreplaceably human because you are incorporating practices of multivariate practices of design into your products. The result is a show that is crazy three-dimensional. We have, of the 46 projects, about 40 of them are either tabletop displays, or there are floor displays or hanging from ceilings. And I would like to make it possible, actually. I know I'm speaking super fast. And I will say this, because my studio is based here and in Europe, I'm super lucky that I get to travel regularly, and I'm a design fanatic. I collect design books, and every time I'm in a city and there is a graphic design exhibition, I religiously go. And most of the time, graphic design exhibitions are very flat. Are the kind of affordable, cheap exhibition that you do between the expensive fine art exhibition. And I felt that I needed to do something different, that I needed to bring the actual objects, that I needed to do the legwork of breaking away from this flat, printed posters, printed foam core, paper behind glass kind of exhibitions. Because I wanted all of you to experience graphic design in the context that it was intended to be experienced. So if I'm talking about this, the logo for a shop, and the shop exists, I literally brought the sign from the shop. If I'm talking about wayfinding, like this example, which is wayfinding some theaters in Brazil, I literally brought the wayfinding with me from Brazil, because that is when you truly honor the work that the designers are doing. The show became, talking with Max Fields, the director of the Visual Art Center at the EAC, became very sculptural. It was basically a group show of small sculptures, and like my wife beautifully said, that due to my background in editorial design, it sort of became a collection of spot illustrations, just made into three-dimensional objects. So the second thing that I wanted to, that motivated me to do this exhibition, is that at the simplest level, at the most base level, which is something that we always need to think when we're designing, the most basic of goals that we have, the most basic idea that I wanted to convey to the audience was that, this is great design. This is cutting edge design. This is worth your time, worth your attention. And if you're from Austin, Cairo, Sao Paulo, Helsinki, you should be proud of being part of those scenes in those cities. But people don't want to be lectured, which is ironic, we're not a lecture. They want to decide by themselves. They want to navigate and find their own solutions. So my second motivator, and this is, let me see if I explain this correctly, is that quality is the easiest way to sort of understand quality is, even subconsciously, is through comparison. So, the deal is, I've been in Austin for 15 years. I'm super proud of the work that we do in the city. Kind of controversial opinion, but I honestly believe that Austin is a difficult city if you're a visual artist. We don't have affordable studio space. The culture of philanthropy could be better, but it's a fantastic city, again, in my opinion, if you are an ambitious, hungry designer. I think it's one of the top 5 cities in the US for graphic design: New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Austin. And I knew that if I wanted to tell that to people, that it was not going to be enough to say, hey, here's Austin, here's some cool shit. I needed to showcase it in contrast, in conversation, in comparison with the design of the work that is done in some of the design capitals of the world. And the thing is that this simple idea, yes, it started the project. It's, okay, let's show it in comparison. But it had an unintended effect on the way in which the experience was designed, and eventually even in the spatial layout of how the exhibition ended up working. Let me explain this. So this is a top-down sort of view of the gallery from the second floor, and if you look at those glass doors, on the left, here they are right here on this side on the left. This is a blueprint of the exhibition showing all of the projects. It was done in Illustrator. No shame in Illustrator instead of architectural software. And the thing is that this is how the exhibition looks, but the blueprint that actually illuminates the point that I want to show is this. These yellow paths are the sort of minimum area required for foot traffic to be compliant with the ADA regulation. And when you see that, you realize how tight the exhibition is. We arrived at this layout. This is like the 12th or 13th iteration of it, because this idea that I wanted to be able for people to create connections, to move around easily and compare things and establish like threads. We were only able to get to that, be in collaboration with the VAC, after understanding that the level of density that the show required to be impactful was this. That the level of user interaction, literally, that needed to happen for connection, for comparison, for contrast to be actually effective, what needed to be as tight as this. So people can subconsciously, start threading between different projects. And if the number of projects, 46, was significantly lower, I don't think these connections, these conversations, this sort of comparison, this sort of like way of looking at things in contrast was actually going to happen. My initial inclination, like every designer, was to make something that had lots of negative space, a lot of white space. It was very careful to have very careful considerations of sightlines, and it still has, of course, sightlines, traffic flow, etc. And at the beginning of the project, I was not interested at all in making a show that had almost 50 different things showcased, but it was just a result of prototyping and collaborating between me and the VAC. So yeah, contrast was a key motivator for me that had this effect on the physical layout of the show. The third thing is, it's a bit weird, so bear with me, but it's that in the process of doing the exhibition, I realized that the insights from the designers was as important as the artifacts that we were showing. Just like the two things that I already told you, you can see that working in the show unlocked profound kind of questions for me, for my team, and all of this was before we even sat down to talk with the studios from around the world. Here are some screenshots of the Zoom conversations. Over several months, I have hour-long conversations with folks from all over the world, over Zoom. And it became clear that this process of asking and listening was so powerful that once I have experienced that, I could not just keep it to myself as a curator. I felt that I would be robbing the audience of an opportunity to have a deeper, richer, more robust understanding of being a designer, living a creative life. So I needed to find a way to do this, to bring it to the audience in a way that could make, the insights matter as much as the artifacts, but it cannot just be, it cannot just be a passive experience. So on top of being the curator of an exhibition spread out across 4 countries, I also became a documentary filmmaker, something that I had never done before. I worked with Brad Abrahams, a filmmaker here in Austin, and together we film and travel to Austin, Sao Paulo, Helsinki. This is Marina Vesico, designer of the Year of Finland in 2022, meeting her for the first time after a year and a half talking over Zoom. And she's 9 months pregnant right there. She just gave birth right after that. Now, okay, we've shot the footage, it looks amazing. The question is, how do I bring this to the audience? And it's not going to be like a catalog with a bunch of interviews at the end, because that would be an experience that is not, it doesn't honor, it doesn't bring forward these insights. So what I did is that I did 2 things. I recorded an interview, like a kind of conventional interview, tell me about you, your life, your practice, your story, whatever. And then I also brought with me a questionnaire that had 100 questions. I asked Shruti right there, I remember that it was a long afternoon, and I had this question, the same 100 questions I asked them to all of the 16 studios If you're doing the math, that is 1,600 answers, and many of them are contradictory. And these are some of the questions that were in the original questionnaire. And here is some of the beautiful footage that we shot. And then after I have those 1,600 questions and answers, we took the best 25 questions and the best 10 answers for each of them, and edited videos. And then happened what I think is truly important for the experience of the visitor, for making it something that is not passive. That I spent a crazy weekend on ChatGPT and Perplexity, and I coded touchscreen. And the 25 questions are right there. And if you go to the exhibition, there's this plinth that has these questions, and you can ask any of these questions to the screen, and you get answers from Europe, from Africa, from Brazil, people of all different ages, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, or all sorts of different approaches to design. Because again, the value of getting those insights from those designers truly happens if you have some sort of action, if you have some sort of involvement, rather than just being passive, receiving everything from the screen. This is how it looks. I purposely did code that is very lightweight. The entire is like an HTML file that is like 8 kilobytes or something like that. So it was important for me to not have any kind of lag. And I brought an example. It's one of the ones that have the shortest answers, and it's a question that I was surprised. I honestly was surprised by the answers that I received from people from all over the world. Let's see if the audio sounds right. No, the audio. The audio is working. Okay.
Question 18.
Yeah.
How do you protect your studio's intellectual property?
That's tough. Right now in the digital age, it's really hard to. There's not a lot of safeguards in place for artists and designers who post their work online. So, guess lawyer up.
Good question. Maybe we should.
He was super
I
hungover.
just hope people respect it, but I hope they're fair for us. We don't.
Well, I think we are paid for what we delivered. I think I like the idea to get it to the world. Since the thing was created, it's in the world and everybody can use it. And for other things, I think it doesn't change the value of the things.
I don't protect. I don't do anything about this. I have never done anything about this.
Well, as a designer, just making sure our intellectual levels are constantly growing and evolving. The rest is taken care of by lawyers.
I don't actively do it, to be honest. I don't do something specific about it.
We basically have a contract where we own the rights to our own work, so we can pretty much show it to anyone, and it's part of our portfolio. And in our contracts, we do kind of limit our intellectual property to our clients and how they.
Yeah, it's in the contract. There's a issue about it in the contract somewhere.
Honestly, the experience of meeting these folks was one of the most beautiful, enriching things that I have ever had as a kid. And I hope that you all get the chance to go and ask them questions at the exhibition. You can pick any question that calls you. And I have talked a bunch about the people behind the show, but I haven't really talked much about the projects. So I wanted to very quickly just show you, like 3 projects and the kind of questions that I think they bring forward. So the first one is the branding for the Venice Biennale. It was done by Brazilian Studio Campo. And this is obviously a very high profile project that has many, many, many touch points, and we're talking about wayfinding, books, advertising, guides, animation maps, merchandise. So for me, this kind of project has so many touch points that it's impossible to control the quality of anything. After a while, it brings forward a question that is very difficult for me, that is, as a creative, how do you let go? Then we have this one that is Citco, or I should call it Citco Pizza, but I should call it actually the Citco Corporate Pizza Company. It's a pizza place in Finland, founded by a bunch of punks. This project was done by Berlik, a studio in Helsinki, and the entire brand of Citco is a performance against the cliches of artisanal Neapolitan pizza and all of that. And the aesthetics combine punk graphics with like super high-end, like Ikebana sort of, photography. And for me, a project like this and the kind of aesthetic that they have decided to use into pizza boxes, into communications, etc., that is very anchored in counter-like system, etc., is in today's world, can commercial design be actually subversive, or just co-opting subversive aesthetics? And the final project is this one. It's called Mancha. It was, which means origin, and it was owned by Studio Netzal in Cairo. And this project has a scope that is absolutely insane. I'm just going to read it. It's a music compilation, a CD, right? Should be easy, straightforward. But these guys went so far above and beyond. They did 13 individual brands, 70 heads modeled in 3D, custom calligraphy, custom motion graphics, video captures, bunch of stuff. And for me, the question that approaches has this amount of freedom from the client side is, if there are no limits, how do you know what rules to break and what rules to keep as a designer? Again, the show runs on the January 1st. I hope that you will get the opportunity to come. I'm super critical of my own work. I'm a hater by nature, and I'm proud of the work. And I know that we're supposed to go into the Q&A now, but my mother told me to never come empty-handed to a party, so I brought a gift. And that gift is that I would like to kickstart the Q&A by showing you, I brought the top 5 questions that I get asked all the fucking time when I'm giving a tour, when I'm either with students or, academics, etc. So we can get those out of the way because I get them asked so much. Right. You ready? You want to hear those?
Yeah.
So the first one is like, how did you do it? Like, how did this happen? And obviously this question can be interpreted in 2 different ways. One of them is like how it was possible, and the answer is simple. Like, I decided that I wanted to do it, and when I decide to do it, something, I have this unwavering, fucking energy to do things until they're done. But the other way of interpreting this is that I think will be more helpful for you is that how do something of this scale comes together? And for this, I have a practical answer. That is, a few years ago, I read this book called Run Studio Run. I don't know if some of you have heard it. It's a little tiny book about how to run a creative practice, but it had an insight that completely changed the way that I do work, and it's the following. Anything that you do repeatedly, anything that you find yourself doing 3 times, 4 times, anything that you do repeatedly must become a process. Because process disappeared. And in today's world, we can actually, at my studio, the processes are nowadays done by bots. We don't have humans running the processes. So when I run the numbers on this exhibition, and it was like 16 studios, and I need to meet 4 times with each of them, and each meeting is like 2 hours, that's 130 hours. And if I only have 3 hours of leisure time, I get off work at 6, I go to bed at 9, supposedly, that is, I'm not a mathematician, that is 42 days straight of just talking with people after work and then going to sleep, and that is impossible. So I created, along with the system for the exhibition, I created a system to make the project happen. Rather than having one-on-ones constantly, I was recording videos and sending them for all of the studios to review, rather than having, too much communication, I had Google Docs that could be reviewed asynchronously, etc. So yeah, that's how it happened. I basically built a system that took into consideration every action that I needed to do repeatedly. I made it into a process, I automated it, and it disappeared. The second most asked question is, how much did it cost? Like, let's talk about money. And this question is exclusively asked by academics and people that work in the arts. Not a single student has ever asked me anything about money, which I found like a bit like worrisome, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But the answer obviously has like every budget has two parts. You can look at let's say this. You can look at it as raising money, which is cash in hand, or you can look at lowering cost, which is in the context of this is called in kind. You know, getting donations of materials, labor, etc. And for this one, I also read a little book. It's actually a PDF, so I don't have it, and it was really helpful. It's called A Tactical Guide to Sponsorship. And this introduced a concept that I had never realized, that it was that when you do a project that's going to require sponsorship or collaboration or partner or something like that, that project must solve a problem for someone. If it doesn't solve a problem for anybody, it's going to be impossible to raise money for it, right? So in my case, the problem that it was solving was access, to communities like creative designers, advertising people, etc. So once I have developed a framework of looking at the exhibition as an opportunity to have access to interesting, cool people, I was able to identify the partners that were interested in this. I was extremely lucky that the partner that we got was actually super cool. Is this marker brand called Posca, which is part of Uniqlo, which is part of Mitsubishi Pencil. They were amazing, amazing partners. But I'm not going to skirt around the question. I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to tell you the number. But I will say this as a preface, that if somebody had told me how much it was going to cost before I started, I would have freaked out. So don't freak out about the number. It's really, most of it is in kind, but an exhibition like that is about like $80,000, $80,000 to $100,000, depending on how you measure it, the different aspects of it. And this is like a back of napkin calculation. Their question, how do you pick the people, the studios, the cities? Like, how do you do that? And I'll try to keep it short, but basically, for the cities, a friend of mine, Baria Shehab, she wrote an amazing book that I recommend everybody. It's called A History of Arab Graphic Design. And it's like yay thick, beautiful. It's an extremely important book for anybody who's into graphic design. You can buy it on Amazon nowadays. And another person that I met through Jimmy Van Loo, Elaine Ramos, she wrote a book that is called A Timeline of Brazilian Graphic Design. So I know both of them, and I started meeting with them, and through those conversations, it became obvious that the place in Brazil was going to be Sao Paulo, and that the place in the Swana, like Southwest Asia, North Africa region, that was the hub for education right now, was Cairo, due to a number of historical circumstances, or economical circumstances also. In Helsinki, I basically spent some time in the Nordics. Finland is a Nordic country, it's not a Scandinavian country, and by visiting several of these countries, I became enamored. Am I pronouncing that right? In love with the graphic design in Finland. And I literally met folks from Shiktoika on the street walking in Helsinki. The studios, this is an interesting one if you're like a young designer. So I don't speak Arabic. I don't Finnish. It's like Klingon. It's an impossible language to understand. So I started my search for the studios by looking at professional networks like Behance and things like that. And it was useless. Then it was really useless. Then I started looking at professional, like adjacencies, like professional things like awards, press, etc. And I found a thing here and there, but I was not really getting into communities of practice that were doing things that were interesting, that had a different approach to design. And then I opened what people nowadays call a Finsta, a fake Instagram, and I started following people. And I started very quickly understood that the way to look at the project was not about building a list, but was about building a network map of relationships and mapping those. And it became evident that there were in every city, in each one of these 4 places, there were nodes where people congregated around, where community actually happened. For example, in the case of Cairo, was a printing studio that specializes in risography called Riso Masr. Masr means Egypt. And I constantly found like the comments, the engagement that was happening around that studio, on the events that the studio put together. I was able to find interesting stuff. and opportunities there. And the individual projects, it was simple. I talked with every studio, and we did a short list of like 5 to 6 projects. And then I, as a curator, decided on the final 3 because I had to be decided in the context of the exhibition. Every studio in this show apparently has done a pizza place. So the entire show could have been like 16 pizza places. So I had to pick one of them, etc. in the context of all the others. Let's see, next question. What was the most difficult thing to do? Yes, my God, I get asked this all the time. So, like I mentioned with the Venice Biennale project, I'm fairly OCD, so letting go, like this project is impossible for me to do everything, so letting go for me was an education that I received there. And it was only possible because the caliber of the people that I work at the VAC, the Visual Arts Center, not only because the work is great, they're great installers, they're great curators, but also they had this enthusiasm about what we were doing together that it was really, really, you know, in improv, that there's this idea of yes and, that you bring a prompt and the other people have the person has to say yes and, it felt like that experience. And I hope that when all of you are just doing your creative practices, you get to work with teams that have that energy, that is like, let's put this thing on top of fake grass, astroturf, and the other one's like, oh yeah, let's put some flowers in it, like things like that. And the second thing that was important for me to be able to let go is that my practice is all about building systems, as you probably already understood. So very early on, I committed to creating a system that basically allowed me that was robust enough that I could manage projects of different scale, different proportions, colors, etc. And that it was built with enough guardrails in place that we could break the system successfully. A good system is a system that is built to be broken. Like an example that I had given before is that a good car is a car, like if cars are made to be crashed safely, you know, nowadays if you crash into a car you should come unharmed, and creating a system that allowed me to trust it and just letting it go and working with people that I was able to trust helped me, you know, helped me manage the most difficult thing for me, which was letting go. And the final question, did you know how to do everything before you started the project? Like people always ask me, so Jimo has done this a million times, and no, like I've never done an exhibition of this scale. I have never shot a documentary like that before. And I would say that the one skill that is related to living a creative life, of being a designer, that actually transferred into this project, beyond system design or whatever else, is that I have cultivated an ability to figure shit out with joy. Like you face problems, and rather than seeing them as obstacles, I see them as, oh, the problem finally arrived. Rather than coming later when we're closer to the deadline, we're actually facing the problem now and we have time to figure that. So having that skill of basically figuring shit out with joy is super important. And second, in a more sort of like practical thing, something that saved me enormous amounts of money and headaches was that I have always had a bias for action, a bias for making. And this concept that you'll probably manage, that is low resolution prototyping, was fundamental for the exhibition. Every time that I was deciding on a project, I would make a quick mock-up with cardboard and white cardboard and just drawing it. I made a small surface in my studio where I would place projects or these low resolution prototypes, and immediately it surfaced problems and solutions. So I think that that's the one thing that I knew that I was able to bring from my sort of graphic design practice into the project that helped me a lot make it happen. So that's it. That's all. That's all. I think that we now do the Q&A.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. One question. We have 5 minutes for questions. All right. Maybe ask a 4-minute question.
What are you planning to submit
What are your plans for disseminating this later on?
Okay, so the exhibition was built to travel. Every time that I talk with a studio, I was like, this is the timeline, this is the budget, and one of the goals is not only to show it in Austin, but it is to travel. And we're in conversations right now to take it to Finland, Brazil, and Qatar, and hopefully Poland.
Maybe you do like a publication or anything?
Can you say that again?
Can you do publication or anything to translate?
Interesting question. I think that it is not something that for the Austin one I'm particularly inclined to do, but here's the deal. This is so, I don't like to do one-offs, like I always build systems, so 100 points has been conceived as a solo project, where this is just the very first iteration of it. So maybe the next 4 cities, then when we have 8 cities, 12 cities, maybe that will be the time to do a catalog.
It would be a good resource.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, next one.
I have one. And I'm interested in your point of view as non-academic. One of the things that I find really hard is to encourage my students to learn kind of the basics and everything that they should know about design, but also holding to who they are and their history and their experience. And one of the things that I find very interesting about this exhibition is rich, because each one of the designers have their own story. And so how would you, I'm asking for advice, how would you do it from your point of view, if you have?
Yeah, great question. And during the process of making the show, I talked with a friend of mine who was the chair, let's keep it anonymous, the chair of a very important school of graphic design. Mm-hmm. And we had this conversation about the future of education and and he said like, hey, Lope, like you're just explaining like in simple terms, like the thing is that what we're getting is the kids that are good at drawing. That's what we're getting out of school. And what we should be getting is the kids who have an infinite curiosity for the human condition. That happens to manifest itself in aesthetics, you know, that happens to manifest itself in whatever you want to call design. So for me, it's about that. It's not about the tools to make design. It's about the tools to unlock a version of yourself, of a version of the world that, yeah, is true to yourself, but it also that acknowledges what other people have done, what is in the past, the references, etc., and understands that, yes, all of us, really, really, all of us have the capacity to make something new, something beautiful. I truly believe this. One of the 100 questions that I asked in the thing was about the future of education. You actually asked it twice in different formats. And most of the studios, most of the designers were like, I have no clue. They were like, it seemed probably, again, this idea of artificial intelligence is also bringing some additional questions in how we move forward with design education. I did not study design. Nobody in my studio studied design. Like journalist, philosopher, DJ. So for me it's about curiosity, human condition, and the practice of working with aesthetics. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, right, awesome. All right. One more, 2 more?
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up.
All right, no more.
Thanks everybody.